Hi guys, it's never a good sign when the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, step in and give a government advice. It is even worse when that economy is supposed to be one of the most powerful in the world. Well, that's exactly what happened on Tuesday when the IMF made a rare intervention saying that the British government's mini-budget was causing turmoil in the markets and it advised against using untargeted fiscal packages. Experts have said that the IMF's words resemble warnings it has given to emerging economies in the past that were on the brink of collapse. And this sentiment was echoed by Danny Blanchflower, a former member of the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee. Have a listen.
But I think the crucial thing why the markets didn't like this, if you say this is going to work and you say tax cuts are going to pay for themselves, then you have to show us the numbers. You have to say, okay, this is what it's going to cost us, N billion. And you say, right, the revenues over the future time period are going to be these and they're going to pay for themselves. The problem with that is they didn't do it. They haven't told us any of those numbers, presumably because they don't want somebody like me saying, well, that's a joke. That's just not going to happen. So they may believe it, but the problem
so could there be a U-turn then if the Chancellor comes back with these OBR forecasts, because they'll have to show their workings out. There's an OBR forecast saying one thing that goes against their policy. Will there be a U-turn, do you think? Or can they go against OBR forecasts?
Well, the best they can say is that they've put it off for 2 months. But I think it's worse than that. What's worse than a U-turn? I called it a screeching handbrake U-turn. I mean, it's a really, really fast one. I mean, the reality is these are uncosted estimates, and they just don't look credible. So the question is, if you're the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and what you've done is you've stood up and you've crashed the markets, you crashed the bond market, you crashed the foreign exchange market, the stock market's dropped, the housing market's in trouble, and you created a giant recession because the Bank of England has to raise rates. Your credibility is completely trashed. And what's the Prime Minister going to say? Well, at the moment, she appears to be hiding. But the questions that journalists like you and Ian King and everybody else and Ed Conway and others are going to ask is, so what are you going to do? It's all completely failed, hasn't it? They told you it was going to fail, and it has. Now what are you going to do? And obviously the question then is, politically, does she survive the month? Does she actually get to, and does he get to, this statement in 2 months' time? Because presumably, politically, they've created a disaster, and there's even an issue. Could you actually get this through the House of Commons? Unclear. I have never seen anything like this. I've been an economist for 50 years. I went through the Great Recession. I have never seen such raging incompetence ever.
Well, not exactly a ringing endorsement there. Now, what will happen? And I'm just speculating, of course, but I have a feeling what's going to happen is Liz Truss and her administration will resign, because they've dug themselves into a hole that they can't get out of. They could try to undo the policy, so they could say, okay, we're going to reinstate these tax rises or taxes, the higher rate of tax of 45%. We're going to reinstate the banker's bonus, but that's not going to fix anything. It's not going to reset the economy, because these were measures supposedly brought in to fix the problem, but the problem will remain. So you're undoing the fix in a sense. The problem doesn't go away. Liz Truss, and we said it in the past, Liz Truss is worse than Boris Johnson. She's surrounded herself with people who have no understanding of economics and no interest in dealing with the big issues of today. Their response to everything is cut taxes, cut regulation, cut the government down to the bone. And it's not going to fix the problem. I honestly don't know what they're going to... So as he said in this report here, they're going to issue some sort of statement on the 23rd of November. 8 weeks. I don't think her government would last 8 weeks, because there are a number of issues here. First of all, the pound is still weak. It has recovered somewhat, but there's no evidence to present that it's actually going to rise. So there's nothing on the table that we can point to and say, okay, this is something that's going to help the pound return to its previous state. The Bank of England is talking about increasing more interest rates, so this is going to drive up the price of mortgages. a number of mortgage providers have already removed some of their packages, which will make it more difficult for people to buy homes, to get loans. So this is going to create a credit crunch. Banks are not going to hand out money because they're afraid they're not going to get it back. And then there's the cost of living crisis that has not been touched by these policies that Liz Truss was suggesting would fix it. So I think what's going to happen is probably Liz Truss, first of all, I think the chancellor will probably resign. And if the chancellor resigns, I think it's going to be very difficult for Liz Truss to remain in place. Now, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen next week, it could happen next month, it could happen after the 23rd of November. It's extremely difficult to predict, but it's unlikely that this government will see out its own time frame, this time frame of the 23rd of November. It's likely it'll be gone before then. Then what happens? The crisis hasn't gone away. People are still struggling to pay their bills. The Bank of England is increasing mortgage rates or interest rates, which fall into mortgage rates after that. Anyway, whether there's a government there or not, the Bank of England operates independently, and a recession is on the horizon. Now, it's possible that there would be a general election, but that would require Parliament supporting it. And even if Liz Truss is on shaky ground, she still commands a 70-odd seat majority. So unless the Tories decide, yes, it's time for a change of government and a change of party, I don't think we're going to see a general election. Unless there's some mechanism within Parliament that I'm not familiar with, but it's likely it's going to require the Tories turning on their government. And the only way the Tories will turn on their government is if there's pressure applied to individual MPs. The MPs stand up in the House of Commons and say it's time to go. And I don't know who will be the first one to do it, but it will be pretty shocking because you've had a Prime Minister who's just entered the job. I don't think there'll be a vote of confidence, not within the Conservative Party anyway, because it's too short. They need to have it after a year, unless the rules get changed again, but it's likely it'll be either 6 months or a year, and we're talking about weeks, days, we're not talking about months. It's all up in the air, and we can't actually predict anything at the moment. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.